Kia ora everyone, and welcome back to Humankind. This is the third part of my sort of over-explained Humankind series, where I take you through each era of the game and give you some useful tips that you'll want to use not only in this era, but in the others as well. And if you haven't seen the first two episodes, I've already done the Neolithic era and the Ancient era, and now it's time to talk about the Classical era. And as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the really fundamental points in Humankind, not only because you start to get a much better picture for what your empire will look like moving forwards, but also because the decisions that you make now and that the way that you in particular build your cities will massively impact your game down the line. In this video, we're going to cover off lots of the key things that you need to worry about in the Classical era, including fortifying your homeland, figuring out the map, where your enemy is, what you need to do about them, if anything, how to build better cities, what you should be prioritizing, and a whole load more. So sit back and get comfy, and let me take you through the Humankind Classical era. And the first decision that anybody will be making when they move into the Classical era is this one: who to choose. Let me give you a quick rundown of the key Classical era cultures. Again, in this video, I'll be giving more generic tips across the board that you can hopefully utilize in any game setting, because every game of Humankind is very different, depending on who you started with and who you're moving through into. I had the Egyptians, a great starting culture, and you can see I can't choose the Meier, who are a fantastic follow-up, by the way. Really powerful at the moment in this game. The Celts as well for food, very powerful. A couple of other quick recommendations that I would give. A scientific culture can absolutely be worth picking up around era 2 or 3, and the Greeks, I think, are a very good one at doing that. If you have a lot of coastline, the Carthaginians can be very strong, and also, if you'd like to build a lot of cities, then maybe you should look no further than the Persians. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to choose the Persians because they provide me with not only an additional 2 city cap, more on that later, but also plus 10 stability on all my cities, plus a district that gives me a little bit of influence and money, and a reasonable unique unit. They're not the best culture in this era, and I think that in general you might find more success with someone like the Greeks, or the Maya, or the Celts, but they're actually a fairly solid choice. So I'm going to go through and choose the Achaemenid Persians for my next era. One thing that we've talked about a little bit in previous videos, but haven't really brought it to the forefront of your mind, and that is era stars. So as you know, you do need, and we've discussed it a bit already, I know, but you need 7 stars to make it through to the next era. A couple of quick tips here that I want you to bear in mind as you're watching this video, and then playing Humankind yourself, is that the era stars that are most closely aligned to your affinity, in this case, I am an expansionist empire, which kind of sucks, but I need to try and earn these stars because you can see that they reward 1.5 times as much fame as every other. What's also important to note is that the final star, the golden star, will reward you with additional fame too. So it can be worth hanging around in an era if you're close to fulfilling the 3 stars to get that golden one. You can see down here with my builder stars, I'm already 1 star in and I've got a few more to go. Maybe I can try for that golden star this era as well. Something to bear in mind when you're playing through and trying to figure out how to get as much fame as possible. Collecting those gold stars could be something that you want to focus on. Another thing that I want to address here in this video is combat. So, at this point in the game, in the Classical era, you have likely painted a lot of the map, and you'll start to get a feel for where your enemies or friends potentially are. You can start to get a feel for where the tensions are going to occur as well. You can see here there are some border conflicts that are really not in my favor. If you see a battle like this, it tends to be better to retreat, but you can only retreat once. Instant resolving will usually result in a loss. It may not always, but usually. You can see here I've lost on 2 fronts. We'll get to this one in a bit. But those conflicts you really want to stay away from because you're also generating additional war support or indeed losing war support. And that's something to bear in mind. Here you can see I'm receiving -8 war support because I recently lost a battle. My enemy is receiving +8 because of a recent victory. This is why, at this point in the game in the Classical era, it's very risky to send sole units out to look for more land, because you may get caught off guard by an enemy army. And if you lose those fights, you begin to lose war support. The higher the war support, basically, the more likely they are to win a war. Why? Well, if they declare war on me when they have 100 war support and I have really poor war support, maybe 50 or 30, then it doesn't take as much for them to win the war. Their war score will generate much more quickly than I can generate any because I started at a lower point, and that'll mean it'll be easier for them to push their terms of surrender on me. Basically, they'll be able to take over my land easier. So during the classical era, it's really important, I think, that you zoom out and get a feel for the map as a whole and where your key points are going to be. And then it's time to start building an army. And in general, your unique units, here are the ones that I picked up from my previous era, playing as the Egyptians, tend to be a really great decision. Just make sure that you're supporting them with an additional unit. So in this case, my unique unit is a ranged unit. So in order to support myself, to build up a stronger army, to reduce losses out in the field, and to ensure that the AI is less likely to attack me, it makes sense to build an army and to cover their bases. So these units are ranged, so I might want to have, say, an anti-cavalry or a melee unit next here. So something like the warriors might be a really good build for me here in Memphis. And indeed, I'm going to do just that. I'm going to pick up 3 warriors and support them with 1 more ranged unit. It will use the population from the city. So at the moment, Memphis has 5 pop. Whenever I make a unit, it'll reduce that pop, in this case by 1. But we just have to do that. We need an army. In the classical era, you do need an army. Now let's talk about combat. Here I'm fighting against some Egyptian rebels, and I'll talk about rebels and stability a bit later in this video because it's another really important part of this era. But let's talk combat, and in this case we're looking at defense. You can see here I'm not favored to win this fight. I have 3 levies that were spawned in my city, and I'm being attacked by 3 warriors who are actually attempting to besiege and take control of this city. So I guess, in this case, we're talking defense and how to defend the lands that you've fought so well to take in previous eras. In general, your units will receive a fortification bonus for being behind walls. So if you've built the infrastructure in your cities to have walls, to remind you, it's this here, the palisades, which are unlocked very early. I would really recommend you prioritize those. In fact, they're very easy to build, and they will allow your cities to spawn units like levies that have spawned down here in this fight. However, let's focus back on this fight. So I'm going to manually resolve the battle, and I'm decided to put my units in the most defendable spots possible. That is basically behind my walls. You can see here that they're really just little stones lined up along the border, but they make a difference. Now what I could do here is choose to attack. You can see that if I attack, I'll deal somewhere between 9 and 25 damage, but I'll take 19 to 32. Why? Well, you can see the numbers up the top there. You can see in general, my levies are receiving additional strength from being guardians and being near friendly units. They're taking a little bit of extra damage though from being damaged, but I'm not going to take that fight. That's fairly even, and I don't want to lose these units because if I lose these units, I lose this city. What I will do though is try and get my healthy units to the front of the battle. Because you can see here that this unit is actually taking a little bit of damage from being damaged. It's weaker because it's damaged. So I'm going to pull this unit out, back to the flag, this point that you should try and control where you can, and send my strong units to the front. Now, here, instead of attacking, I'm also going to choose to defend. I'm on the defense here. I'm defending my own city. I don't need to be going out and trying to attack over these walls. So I'm just going to click defend on this unit and then defend on this one as well. Now you can see that not only are they fortified behind walls, but they're also receiving a defending bonus. That's some additional combat strength because I chose to defend rather than attack. Watch here as I defend again with these units. I'm going to put this one on defense and this one on defense. You'll see they start to again get that defensive bonus. Now this unit, if you take a look at its overall sort of combat strength, you'll notice it will receive additional strength from that defense. I'll do it here again and watch the damage that I take. 20 versus 22, 19 versus 26, and 16 versus 26. So you can see now I am dealing more damage than I'm taking. And that would not be the case if I tried to jump over these walls and fight the enemy. The only reason I'm winning this fight, where I'm not favored to actually win, my chances are, as you can see, less than half, is because I'm sending my most healthy units to the front line, and I'm literally just asking them to defend. Battles in Humankind have 3 rounds per in-game turn. We've played out our 3 rounds, so that battle is done. As you can see, we're now slightly more favored to win. One technology, by the way, that is so important, and we should talk a little bit about the tech tree now before we move into combat part 2 in the classical era. There are a few really key important techs that I'd recommend you pick up. In the ancient era, you're going to want to get the base 4, obviously. Irrigation infrastructure is very good if you have rivers. And then the other one is organized warfare. This will allow you to reinforce. That basically means bring armies that aren't in a battle into a battle and reinforce your existing troops who are already fighting. Really important, and I wish I had it already, but I don't. Moving through into the era that we're actually focusing on, the classical era, there are a few key techs here as well. First up, if you need to sail across the ocean to find new lands, trade expeditions is for you. Philosophy will give you an additional city cap and the research quarter, very powerful. And then towards the end of the classical era, imperial power unlocks the commons quarter. This is the stability district, more on stability in a bit, but this one is pretty juicy as well, so I'd recommend you grab imperial power. Now, back to the task at hand. Welcome to turn 2 of this fight, and you can see we are much more favored to win now. We've successfully drawn out this battle long enough that we can now just defend in place. They've made it over my walls, so I'm just going to stab them now because there's no real difference to me defending or attacking. And just like that, victory is ours. We lost 1 unit defending the city, but we actually defended the city. And now that the battle is done, I can bring in these units that I was unable to reinforce and position them here in Thebes just in case we have to fight someone again moving forward. It's a nice spot for us to position our units in, and actually it ties me really nicely into my next point, which is all about stability and influence. The classical era is where stability and influence really starts to matter, and I know it sounds kind of boring, but let me take you through it nonetheless. The reason why I even had to engage in this fight was because my stability fell below 30%, and I moved from being strained, that is this middle area between 30 and 90, to being mutinous. My people literally rebelled against me, and that is who we were fighting. Now, in general in Humankind, and as I talk through this, I'm just going to plan out some of my cities here, plan out my unique districts and so on. Generally in Humankind, stability is something that you can afford to keep low, but there are some real benefits to keeping it high. If you're above 90% stability in a city, you will receive basically double the amount of influence. You'll get 2 per population instead of 1. And that's super powerful, not just because influence, as you know, is the required currency for, say, expanding out, building new territories, turning them into cities, and upgrading existing infrastructures and resources within them. But also it's really important for this, the society screen. The more influence you generate, the more powerful your society will be, and the more likely your societal pressure will spread over other territories. And why does that matter? Well, you can see that each territory is providing me with additional influence to help spread my society even further. So it is pretty important that you bolster these up, right? This one, 18 from districts, how good? And it would be double that if I actually had my stability in order. How can you increase stability in the early game? Well, there aren't actually many ways to do it. In general, you'll be losing stability probably because of districts. Each district will provide you with -10, except for the garrisons, which provide +5, +10 if you can upgrade them, and the commons quarters, which is why I talked about the commons quarters a little bit earlier, a couple of minutes ago, because they really matter. Giving your commons quarters, at least having the ability to build commons quarters, makes a big difference if you need to emergency build some stability in your cities. But how else can you improve it, and why does it matter? Well, it matters, like I say, to ensure that you can keep growing. Stable cities can continue to grow, not only within themselves, but also empire-wide, because they give you more influence, which allows you to build more cities and connect more territories, also connect more civics, right? It's so important. I cannot stress it enough. It's something I usually neglect. I don't mind writing it down within this middle area, but if you can help it, you really should try and max it out, particularly if you're struggling with growth, and if you're struggling to fill out the Aesthite era stars. Can be really useful to have your stability maxed out if you want any hope of maxing those stars out, not just this era, but in future eras as well. So do take care, try and keep your stability high. Some other ways you can do it outside of actually building it through garrisons or infrastructure can also be to have your armies positioned in a central spot. You can see here I have 4 units, 4 warriors and my ranged unit, and I've positioned them and stationed them using this ability here, station, within Memphis. What this is doing is actually providing some stability. You can see here under gains, I'm gaining plus 40 base value, plus 15 from the garrison district, plus 15 from the infrastructure improvement, plus 45 from my empire-wide bonus to ideology, and then finally plus 50 flat stability on the capital. So you can see where each of these pieces of stability is coming from, and you'll notice a stark loss in stability if I were to move my units out and just have them sort of marauding around for no reason. See here, instantly I'm losing that precious stability that I had before, whomp, when my units were stationed in here and ready to perform. So I'm going to bring that back up online, keep those units stationed, also build some garrisons. You can see they're providing plus 2 influence because of my unique, but more importantly, plus 5 stability. So it's not a bad idea to build these. These garrisons also act as a military spawn point. So, if you have an enemy, let's say I had an enemy out here who I wanted to fight, I could build a garrison right out here. They don't need to be connected to other districts, the other beauty of the garrison. And then I can select it as my unit spawn point. And all of the units that I create in the city will then spawn here on the new garrison. Very useful if you're about to engage in combat and you need to send your units somewhere that isn't very close to your city. So I'd really recommend you check that out. One other element that will likely start snowballing as you've changed cultures a couple of times in the classical era is this, your religion. Now, I do have dedicated videos on things like religion and sphere of influence, but I think it's important that they're part of this series, not only because they're constantly changing and being updated, and so therefore my information needs to be updated, but also because it makes sense within the era, within the classical era. So, broadly, if you don't know, basically you generate faith from your districts, your holy sites, so on and so forth, maybe your population as well from those first tenets. And then if you click the religious overview screen, you can basically see that populations follow your religion. You can see I have 2 in this territory, 7 in this one, 4 in this one, and they're under conflict, right? They're being influenced from other religions that are spreading around the world. Thankfully, these ones are mostly under my influence because my faith output is quite high and they're connected to my capital, or at least close enough to it. Every time you reach a follower milestone, you can choose a new tenant. Now, what ones are the best? To be honest, in general, it tends to be the science and the industry ones that are the best. And so in general, unless you really need to fill a blank, like you need influence from mountains, or you really are about to fight someone and so you need to take maybe war support, in general, these ones are the best. Plus 2 food from coastal waters and lakes, plus 2 industry from forests and woodland, seek wisdom, plus 5 science on your horses and your copper. Those are all really good, and I would strongly recommend that you build up a religion with industry and science benefits. The odd food one as well can be really strong. The religion will naturally spread in the background based off how much faith you're producing and how many followers you have within your cities, and also how connected your cities are to enemy ones. So how easy is it, for example, for my religion to flow through? Well, if I had trade or open borders with them, it would be much easier. Something to bear in mind, that is broadly how you set up your religion. You can also, I should note, change the name of your religion to Testo Religio Extremo, if you're that way inclined. That was really, really greatly spelled. And you can also change the holy site icon, which I always forget to do. Sorry, chat. I know I always forget. You're going to rip me for it when you watch this video. But that's what you need to know about religion. And more broadly about how you should shape it as you move through the game, not just here in the classical era, but moving forward. Here is another example of a pretty tough fight. In fact, I may actually lose this one. I just want to bring a couple of things to your attention though. First and foremost, I'm versing mounted ranged units, so I need to bear that in mind for where I need to be to attack them. Secondly, I'm defending my ranged unit by putting my melee units in front of it. It's a quick tip, but it makes a big difference in the long run, right? Definitely try and defend your ranged units, otherwise they will get absolutely obliterated. The other thing to bear in mind is that damaged units deal slightly less damage than their fully healed counterparts. So if you don't have the combat strength to, say, take out a unit in one turn, like I would try and do here, but I'm not going to be able to, then it may be more beneficial for you to instead try and weaken every unit instead of just taking out one. It's something to bear in mind. It's not always the right play, but it could be. Finally, in flat land like this, I want you to be paying attention to rivers. Standing on and attacking on or from rivers is a bad idea in Humankind. So really, really, really stress the importance of staying off rivers wherever possible. One other final thing to note is if you have a city nearby with some walls, mounted units cannot climb walls. So if your opponent is challenging you only with mounted units, you might want to flee back here like I'm doing behind the walls to try and get stronger defense and fight the battle on your terms. The only thing to note is if, like these Hunnic hordes, they are ranged mounted units, they'll still actually be able to fire at you over the walls, so you won't see as much of a benefit as you might if you were just purely hiding behind walls. Another thing that will probably be cropping up for you throughout particularly the classical era will be your ability to take wonders. Now, depending on your difficulty and how good you are at the game, you may or may not get to claim some of the first ones. But these wonders play a huge part in Humankind's early game, largely because they are so incredibly strong. Ones to note in particular are the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. This provides 2 science per every single district on every single city. And then the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which can be built on top of a luxury resource, and they give you the wondrous effect. Which, for those unfamiliar, basically, if you take a look at, let's see, we actually don't have many luxuries in this map, but if we were somewhere that actually had a freaking luxury resource. Let's take lots of strategic ones though. In case you're wondering, I'm just sort of zooming around looking for these icons. Here's a luxury, porcelain. So you can see that normally if you connect porcelain, you get +3 money per porcelain and +4 stability. If you have the wondrous effect, that is having a monopoly over the world's porcelain, or having that wonder built, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, then you receive a much greater benefit. In this case, it's +5% money per porcelain. So that's sort of the early wonders. I'm going to take the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. I think in general this is a pretty solid pick. It will cost you influence, so remember, you're claiming a wonder as a trade-off. You're trading off perhaps using influence to be expanding your territories or upgrading into cities, which I need to do, by the way, at the moment. I'm well below my city cap. But let me just show you a little bit more about how wonders work, because there are a couple of nuances here that even experienced Humankind players might not realize. So wonders are built like shared projects, just like holy sites and any other test project for nukes, that kind of thing. You select it and choose where you want to put it. It doesn't need to be built adjacent to districts, but some wonders do have specific requirements, like the Taj Mahal must be built on a river. But the placement does actually matter, because these wonders work like cities, in that when you place it down, you will receive the tile yields from the tile that you place it on, and you will connect the nearby yields, that is the tiles one around it, the 6 tiles around it, to your city as well. So if I built it here, I'd get the +2 food, and I would connect these adjacent tiles, so I'd get a bit more food and production. The reason why this matters though is because you may have a city built in an area, but then also within its territory, particularly if you've connected to multiple adjacent territories like I have here, you may have other areas that aren't really connected or being serviced by the city. For example, here is a 4 production tile surrounded by another 4 and 4, and then a few average food tiles. Reminder, you can turn on tile yields down the bottom left here if you're not in city view. So if I build it here, I'll connect some really nice productive tiles. I could also choose to build it here and connect these really nice food tiles. And in fact, because this area is quite far away from this city centre where I can build districts, and this actual city centre, I'm going to place it in the middle to hoover up these tiles, which I'm unlikely to improve anytime soon. So I place down the wonder. It is a shared project, so if you click this little icon, you can get your other cities to add production to it. And you can see, because I'm playing on blitz mode, everything is happening quite quickly. Again, I say this every time, but I need to stress it again because there are always some people who get confused in the comments. Don't look at my yields and think, why aren't mine like his? Why can't I build that in that many turns? It will scale based on the game speed that you're playing on. And for these videos, for these tutorials, I play on a fast speed because I like to get to where I need to get to quickly. Before I move through into the next era and end this tutorial, there are a couple of other things that I'd like to bring to your attention. Two, in fact. Firstly, we need to talk about the expansionist stars. These are stars that, in my case, are actually my main star. Now, some things that people don't know about these is that you don't only earn these from claiming more territories, but also from attaching territories. So at the moment, I'm 2 territories away from getting this star. And if you have a look here, let's take Thebes. So Thebes can attach this territory next to it for 45 influence. So I might look to do that when its stability is high enough. For the time being, let's get it building things that will add stability. I will just remind you one more time though, before you start merging up territories to get your expansionist stars, do make sure that you click on them first, and if you have some influence to spare, it is definitely worth, for example, spending 9 influence to connect this iron mine, which will not only provide me with science, but also count as another district built towards my district stars. And boom, after connecting up a few extra territories and of course, balancing that out with stability. And this is something to bear in mind. I just got this city up to where it was going to be at 100%. It can only go up or down 5% a turn, regardless of how much in the positive or negative you are, something to bear in mind. But I got this city to a point where it was at plus 100. I've attached this one territory, which has been great for me because it's earned me that really important fame era star, right? This crucial era star for expanding, and 2 more territories and I can get the next one. But of course, it's cost me stability. So there is this constant trade-off, bargaining and bartering between them. Finally, here at the end of this video, and we'll talk more about this next time because it will be more important, but I do just want to note that you have, as part of your culture and your cultural affinity, an ability that you can use. There's a passive bonus and also an action. In this case, I'm an expansionist. My passive bonus is that I can always trespass an enemy territory. I don't need to declare war on them, even if they have closed borders. But also my action is called Under One Banner. That allows me to forcibly annex a territory occupied by another empire's outpost or administrative center. Basically, I can take other people's outposts even if I don't declare war with them, so long as they're not actual cities. That's what I can do as an expansionist. All the other different types of culture and cultural affinity, which of course align well with the main metrics in the game, have their own abilities. For example, let me show you one really powerful one that you might want to consider, particularly if you're playing on a early game, really powerful science culture, is this. So the scientists give you a passive bonus that allows you to research technology 1 era ahead of where you are. This is ridiculously strong, and if you've seen my tips videos, you know how important this can be. But also collective minds, which is an ability you can use on your cities, and it converts all of their industry and money into science. These are really powerful and they're slightly more extra for experts things, but you can see that every cultural type has its own one and they are so unbelievably strong. Even the agrarian culture ones are actually pretty good. Gains 1 stability when gaining population. It's a nice little benefit. That scales with game speed as well, can be very strong. Other than that, everybody, as I'm ready to head through into the classical era, in this game, I might choose to wait around a bit longer, maybe get my gold stars here and then progress. But either way, we're ready to move through. See you later, classical, and hello to the medieval era. I will see you next time for a medieval era tutorial, and until then, everybody, take care and bye-bye.